this judgment, what it actually did was that the so-called Congress they conducted last month, has been nullified, and the convention has been nullified by the courts because they did it in violation of the constitution of the party, and that's why the court said that convention cannot hold. So what it means is that the tenure of the state executive committee, the tenure of the state working committee of the party is still intact. So whatever they did, the charade they did last month, court just described it as kangaroo, So it's an effort in futility, and so they are not for Bala and they are not for David Mark. They are for the interests of the party, which the court has just upheld today.
A federal high court just told INEC, do not recognize David Mark's conventions. The same week, the opposition gathered in Ibadan to declare unity. A judge in Abuja was quietly dismantling the legal foundation of the very party they want to use to unseat Tinubu. And on that same day, the ruling dropped. Atiku Abubakar was inside Rotimi Amechi's living room in Abuja having what he called an engaging and fruitful conversation. Nobody is connecting these dots for you, but today we will. Welcome back to the channel. This is where Nigerian politics gets the treatment it deserves. No spin, no fear, just the full picture. Let's go. On Wednesday, April 29th, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja barred INEC from recognizing or participating in any congress organized by committees appointed by the Senator David Mark-led caretaker leadership of the African Democratic Congress, the ADC. The judge did not stop there. Justice Joyce Abdulmalik held that neither the Nigerian Constitution nor the party's own constitution empowers the caretaker or interim national working committee led by David Mark to appoint committees to conduct state congresses. Restrain, set aside, barred. 3 words that should send a shiver through every opposition strategist in Nigeria right now. Because the ADC is supposed to be the vehicle that carries the coalition to 2027. Justice Abdulmalik also restrained David Mark and other members of the disputed caretaker leadership from interfering with the functions and lawful tenure of the elected executive. And she further set aside the appointment of any Congress committee by the caretaker group. This is a man who once presided over the Nigerian Senate, a man who positioned himself as the face of Nigeria's new opposition movement, and the Federal High Court just told him the structure he built to consolidate his grip on ADC is constitutionally illegal. Now, for context, because the mainstream media will not give it to you properly, INEC had already announced the discontinuation of recognition of the ADC current leadership to comply with a court of appeal ruling that directed all parties to maintain the status quo pending the determination of the leadership crisis. So INEC had already stepped back. And what did David Mark's faction do? Despite that announcement, the David Mark-led faction protested the decision and went ahead to hold the National Convention without the presence of INEC officials to monitor the process. They held a convention anyway, without INEC, without legitimacy in the eyes of the Electoral Commission. And now a Federal High Court has validated exactly what the rival faction was saying all along. Here is where it gets interesting. On same Wednesday that ruling landed, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar visited former Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi at his residence in Abuja, describing the meeting on his official X account as engaging and fruitful. Details of the discussion were not disclosed. Two of the most consequential figures in Nigerian opposition politics sitting together on the day a court tears apart their party's leadership structure. and we are told nothing specific was discussed. You decide what that meeting was about. Go back to four days to Saturday, April 25th in Ibadan. Atiku, Amechi, Kwankwaso, Peter Obi, David Mark, Jerry Gana, and Pat Otome all gathered for a high-level opposition leaders summit. They issued the Ibadan Declaration. The opposition parties resolved to field one presidential candidate for the 2027 elections, to be agreed upon and supported by all participating parties. They called for INEC chairman to resign. They called for Electoral Act 2026 to be repealed. It sounded powerful. It looked historic, but read between the lines. The clearest signal of trouble came not from what was said at the summit, but from what followed it. Peter Obi, typically active on social media after the political engagement, did not comment publicly on the Ibadan Declaration. What he posted instead were photos of himself playing tennis, a contrast that insiders say reflects his quiet displeasure with the outcome. And there is more. The rival ADC faction led by Nafiu Balagombe disassociated itself entirely from the Ibadan summit, accusing participants of misrepresenting themselves as members of the ADC and describing the gathering as driven by personal political ambitions rather than the party's collective goals. So the opposition is united, except one faction of their main party does not recognize the other, and the cause are now confirming the faction that attended the summit may not even have a legitimate authority over the party. The summit also said nothing concrete about where the single presidential candidate should come from, and that single omission may prove to be its fatal flaw, because zoning sits at the center of every serious opposition conversation, and no one addressed it. Here is the bottom line. Atiku, Obi, Kwankwaso, and Amechi collectively received 60% of the vote in 2023 against Tinubu's 36.6%. Between them, they already beat Tinubu on paper, and yet in 2026, they cannot agree on which convention is legal, which leads the party, or who should be the candidate. As one analyst put it, Nigerians are being called to unite to rescue the country from democratic decline, but the rescuers cannot hold a lawful convention. David Mark is promising to rescue 200 million Nigerians, while a federal high court is telling him he cannot even run his own party. That is not opposition politics, that is organized confusion. And in 2027, Tinubu is watching all of it and is smiling. Until I see you on the next video, please remain blessed.